The Spinoff Podcast Network.
Talofa lava. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spinoff. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spinoff member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by Spark Lab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about Spark Lab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spinoff with help from Callaghan Innovation, New Zealand's innovation agency. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
Today we talk to someone who fuses millennia of tradition with an industry that's often only about the next thing. It's a brand that does fashion, but also a lot more. Her company's pounamu, carved by her husband and business partner Jason, and her woven kākahu cloaks have been gifted to visitors from Barack Obama to the Duchess of Sussex. They are part of their unique offering, contemporary pieces that are of the fashion world and also of Te Ao Māori, which is a concept that she's had to forge room for through determination, talent and dedication. Part of being a pioneer is laying the tracks for the people that follow. Kiri Nathan has created the Kāhui Collective, a group to foster collaboration and knowledge sharing and create a Māori fashion industry. The group has had scores of designers involved. They've taken trips to China and worked to lift each other up. And in the latest in a long line of awards and recognition for her pioneering work, Kiri is a recent recipient of a Blake Leadership Award. To talk the journey, making fashion work in positive ways, and what's next, Kiri Nathan joins us now. Kia ora, thank you for joining us.
Morena, Simon.
Hey, so first up, how did you get interested in the world of fashion?
I think, seriously, it was just watching my grandmother. So she was beautiful. She had a little sewing room in her house, a beautiful old singer, which now sits pride of house in our home as soon as you come in. And she just had a beautiful take on fashion, you know, that era of woman did. And I loved just watching her for hours. So she had a great love of movies and, you know, actresses and so forth. And she used to know all their first and last names. And we just spent a lot of really beautiful quality time together appreciating fashion.
And it's a kind of magic, isn't it? Seeing someone take a piece of cloth and make into this amazing shape and three-dimensional maths, and it's such a wonderful thing to see happen.
Yeah, it was really special to her. So she'd make herself a new dress every Friday, and I'd sit there and watch her, and sometimes it would be from patterns, and sometimes she'd adapt and create things from the newspaper and sort of, you know, sellotape it together and so forth. So from a really early age, I suppose I was watching pattern development and construction, really time, sort of hand sewing, hand tucking, hand plucking and so forth. Yeah, it was beautiful and special, really special to me.
Yeah, and that kind of the glamour of the fashion clothes, but also the craft and the hard work and the maths and the working it out. And it's such a cool thing to see people do.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely more the craft than the pizzazz of it all, and that special time spent with her. So I think the connection to fashion was through a really close and authentic relationship.
And then when you went into study fashion, what was the environment like? Because fashion kind of, by its very definition, it's kind of groupthink, isn't it? Because everything's in fashion or out of fashion and things have to be just the way that's currently kind of accepted. And you had a bit of a broader view.
Yeah, I've never really been able to be cool. So studying fashion was just an organic way of developing something that I felt really passionate about. And I was already a young mother at that time, a young solo mother. Ashley was a year old when I first started the 3 years of study. And what we didn't realise until many years later is that the tutors that we had were incredible artists and fashion designers in their own right. Arnold Manaki Wilson. I did visual arts, so we covered a lot of different genres. Lisa Rehana, Kim Fraser. These people were individually exceptional, and so to have had that time with them was really special. However, it was the first visual arts degree of its time back then, way back then. And 32 of us started that course and 5 of us graduated. So it was pretty hardcore.
Wow. And I saw a story about, a wonderful story about how you'd done an assignment that was a black silk dress that had some pattern work in it. Tell me that story.
It's funny. So a lot of our study was based around theory. And I hated theory. I just wanted to create things. And I was like, why? Why do we have to say exactly why we've developed this, where the idea comes from? And, I just didn't understand it. I just wanted to make things. And so I was really crap at theory, and I got failed on that particular submission by Kim Fraser and Deborah Crow, who are 2 of my favourite women in the world, by the way. And I was like, I really like this garment. I'm going to enter it into the Apple, Youth Awards, Apple Computer Youth Awards at the time. And it ended up winning the women's wear section and the overall supreme. And I didn't say anything to my tutors. And it ended up on the paper, and they read it. And they were like, why didn't you tell us? And I said, because you failed me. And then years later, Kim Fraser is a senior lecturer at AUT Fashion now. And she brought me in to talk to her first year students. And then I think later on, like her second and third year students, and I always bring that story up.
So it took a lot of grace not to bring it up at the time.
She's just mortified every time she can feel it coming.
And so from that kind of path of studying visual arts with the fashion focus, and then having had that success, winning that award there, tell me about what you did afterwards, heading back to the marae in order to fuse a different tradition.
Yeah, that happened quite some years later, actually. Like I said, the 3 years of study were really, really hard. And as a solo mum, there was that extra challenge, I guess. And at the time, and you'll probably remember this, it was really hard to get into the industry. And so as a solo parent, I just didn't have the confidence, I think, to start out then. And so I went into another career. 14 years later, I came back to fashion.
Wow, because even if you get a job in the industry as well, it pays so poorly that if you have got a student loan and a small child, how do you live on the minimum wage that most people get when they first enter the industry?
Yeah, it was too scary for me at the time. I was still only 20, I think, 20 years old when I graduated, and Ashley was then 3. And so I just couldn't do it. So for those 14 years that I worked in another industry, I always entered the Style Pacifica fashion shows or the Cult Couture or whatever. So placed in all of those competitions over the years. So I feel like my community of designers, some of them are around these days, but many of them are not. And they were extremely talented designers. However, the support systems weren't in place. And there certainly wasn't a market for any kind of Indigenous fashion.
And how did that start to change? Tell me about heading to the marae and then deciding to bring that more into your practice.
We were on to our 3rd and 4th child. By this time, I'd married Jason. And I just had this overwhelming desire to learn how to weave. So I could weave what I thought would be a kurawai at the time for Ashley's 21st. And what was great about this learning is that going back to the marae, I could take the babies with me. So I'd have one on the front pack and one sleeping beside me. And that was 2 years going back to the marae to specifically learn contemporary kurawai. I'd also gone to Unitec at the time to learn traditional raranga with the use of muka and harakeke. And it was wonderful. It was almost like stepping into a place that felt like home, but I'd never been there before. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
And was that then the start of the label, Kiri Nathan?
It wasn't the start. I think unconsciously I'd just been adding to the kite, all these different ways of getting these sort of creative thoughts out of my head and being able to tactile and pull these things together through the use of pattern drafting, weaving, pattern manipulation, fabric drapery, and so forth. So really, at that stage, I was still in development mode. It wasn't until we won the traditionally inspired section and the Supreme Award at Style Pacifica that I thought maybe we need to give this a bash.
And so there was constantly the kind of achievement in the awards and recognition for the work you're doing. But how hard is it to find a market for that kind of thing? Which, when fashion is so, groupthink and singular.
Yeah, it was really, really difficult. So we're talking 2008 when we took out Style Pacifica. No idea, had never, studied business, no idea about business. And of course, as we all know, that's 75% of the game. 15% design and 75% business acumen is what's going to get you through. So, and we had 4 children and another one on the way. So it took 2 years of doing more sort of fashion shows. We did the inaugural Metal Mortar, showed at New Zealand Fashion Week for the first time, had our 5th child and last child, goodness gracious. And then we registered the business. But again, we had no idea what we were doing. We weren't actually trading until 2012. And there wasn't a market for us. There were commercial sort of veins of Māori fashion, kākahu clothing with Michael Campbell. But really, there was no examples of a fashion label that was sitting at the same level as what we consider to be our high-end New Zealand, fashion designers.
And then also with the 3 kind of elements to the business, like if you jump on and have a look today with the jewellery, the carved pounamu and the like that your husband does, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And then also all of the tradition around the woven pieces.
Yeah, so when we went out and started looking for stockists, people would want to stock either one of the 3 products. So fashion houses would want to take the clothes but not the weaving or the pounamu. Te Papa and, the poi room and places like that. I love the poi room, by the way. They would want to take the pounamu but not clothing because that's not there. There was no space for us to go out and stock with people. And also we had the added challenge of people not being able to sell our products with, knowledge around the history and storytelling of pounamu or the history and storytelling of Māori weaving. And therein lies a challenge for us because we, as a company and people who are drawing from our Māori culture, need to reciprocate a certain level of respect for that culture. And so we can't just go out and sell through anyone. Mm. It needs to have cultural integrity the whole way, sort of like through. So what we're trying to do at the moment is we don't really fit in the playing field at the moment, and so we're trying to create our own playing field.
Because tell me about how some of those garments are made, because that's the other thing. It isn't just the story of the tradition. It's actually the story also of, the prayer, the reflection, the process that goes into the production, which you don't have with, your average thing you're buying in a frock shop.
Yes, so anything that is inspired by Te Ao Māori, especially the whakairo pounamu, so the carving of the pounamu and the weaving, has to adhere to tikanga or protocol. So, yeah, we always begin with karakia, and there are certain things that we do that I think, keep us safe, keep the mahi, keep the work safe, and keep everyone else safe around us. And most importantly, it's living that authentic life. It's not selling something that we're sort of making up or misappropriating or so forth. It's very, very real for us, and we take the responsibility really very seriously.
And in things like the kākahu, the woven pieces, it's often kind of like some contemporary materials as well as a fusion of the contemporary materials and traditional practices, isn't it? So it's kind of, there's a real kind of education piece for the customer.
Yeah, in my mind, we have the most beautiful and exceptional muka and harakeke weavers in the world. They are absolutely beautiful. So I think that is the epitome of the raranga of weaving in New Zealand and the world. And that area is taken care of. However, what we were trying to create is a fashion brand and a high-end fashion brand. So we're incorporating all the same processes and techniques, however using contemporary medium, and that makes it achievable for us. I feel like we still obviously have our connection to Te Ao Māori, and we're able to push some boundaries and create things that in many ways I haven't seen before, and that's always been a very important thing to us. You know, if something's been created before, then what's the point? We're trying to create new things all the time and challenge ourselves all the time.
And some of the people that, you know, doing this thing that is so unique and new and so kind of like of and special to New Zealand has meant that, you know, it's been gifted to some amazing dignitaries that come through. You know, tell me how that like feels when, you know, you did have to push kind of quite hard to make space in the industry for this viewpoint, and then to be able to put something on the shoulders of a visiting royal or you know, to meet someone like Barack Obama.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot in that lies in the history of the label. When we were first trying to break through, these particular products were the reasons why we weren't accepted into the fashion, you know, arena. However, these particular products are the reason why we've been offered so many very special opportunities, and that's just, it's a little bit of karma, really, and it's a nice acknowledgement of just sticking to your guns and knowing that you're doing the right thing and knowing that you're on the right path, and then that being acknowledged by something like this. However, whenever we gift or when anyone purchases anything from us and they connect to it, whether they're a dignitary or a stranger that we've never met before, those are all really special to us. We understand the privilege of what it is to be in a space with someone who's very well known, but to us personally, it's really important to see anyone connect. It's really emotional. Grown men all the time, like so many people, children, elderly, you know, seeing them connect to something can become emotional is a really special thing in this day and age.
Tell me also about the people who, you know, you're helping to stay in the industry or get into the industry as well, because using traditional techniques in modern ways helps to kind of keep opportunities around to keep these things moving.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the Kāhui Fashion Collective, and we formed that because we had so many challenges when we were first starting out, and I can still see sort of 90% of those challenges for up-and-coming Māori and Pacifica designers. So the reasoning behind creating Kāhui was to, for the first time in New Zealand history, create a community where we can come together and share our networks, our resources, our experiences, and genuinely tautoko or support our fellow designers. In the past, we've all been friends and we've all seen each other and wished each other really well, but this has been a really focused bringing together of community, travelling to China, exposing them to the largest fabric markets and, you know, fashion consumers in the world, so that, you know, traditionally in the fashion industry, people would start out and they'd spend sort of 10 to 15 years just paving their way, and there's a very old school mentality around that being very silo, and so there's never been any sharing because it's like, I've done my time. I've found this pattern drafter, I've found this machinist, and I'm not sharing it with you because we've only got a tiny market here, and I've worked really hard for this. You need to do your time. And that's a really archaic way of seeing things. So I think, we're so connected to the wider world now through the internet and through online shopping that if we just look out to the world, our market grows. And therefore, all we need to do is find like-minded designers, come together, collaborate, maintain your unique voice and your unique label. But when you take it to the world, you have a louder voice and a very strong story.
And the relationship with China. So that's obviously where the great fabric comes from and the like. Tell me about, your journeys into China.
They started off really scary about 8 years ago. We turned up there. We had no idea pretty much what to do, where to go, how to source, how to find an agent or even a translator so that you could function within those markets. We didn't know where to stay. It was really, really, it was basic and very, very scary. Whereas now we feel more than confident. We've had a lot of support over the last 3 years from NZTE, MFAT, MBIE, and these sorts of government organisations that are based in China. They have been amazing. And then we've also made very personal connections with people that have allowed us to go into China at a really high level. So that last trip that we went up to Shanghai, Guangzhou, Beijing, Hangzhou, we met with what could arguably be said to be the highest luxury Chinese brand that has still maintained their cultural integrity. Shangxia, they're absolutely incredible, have been bought into by Hermes and are now situated in every Hermes, boutique around the world. They hosted us for half a day with traditional tea ceremony and talked through how they were able to maintain cultural integrity whilst becoming a luxury label. Lane Crawford, so the Harrods of China, we were hosted for an entire day there, and they were amazing. They told us their business strategies, their intermarket strategies, how they maintain their luxury clients. They were just so kind and so sharing. We met with Alibaba Global, and so usually Alibaba will give you 15 minutes in their foyer. We were given 2 hours with one of their highest luxury executives, and we were hosted at the Museum of China with a security group. We had the chairman of the museum come and meet with us and personally guide us around the high level that we went in there at was so humbling and so beautiful. But they're very, very interested in smaller boutique, limited edition, cultural narrative brands.
And that role of the government agencies and trying to kind of foster and help export out our brands, and also help keep kind of manufacturing and industry viable here. Because as you were saying, it's such a global world. You're not competing against the people down the road. You're competing against every luxury brand on the internet, every fashion brand on the internet. Yeah. What kind of steps are you taking to help try to make sure you can keep your manufacturing in New Zealand and keep that kind of talent supply going?
Oh, there's a couple of layers there. The first one is running a 12-month mentorship program with 10 Māori designers so that we can lift everyone to a level of export. We are forming the first Māori fashion coalition with NZTE in New Zealand history. So we'll have wraparound services and education there on how to export specifically into China, and the secondary focus is the US. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and what's great is that these conversations have started with people that can really support and tautoko, and what needs to happen now is that all of these brands come up and meet these opportunities. And so I've kind of set it as one of my goals to make sure that we're all stepping into that, and positions of authenticity, stepping into our power, and making sure that we take as many people with us as we can. And also, need to look forward into, and you need to look up, like at the bigger pictures. So we're talking about developing AI manufacturing capability here in New Zealand. And what that would mean is that people wouldn't have to go offshore. They could stay here and remain New Zealand made. It would be more cost effective, and hopefully we'd be able to, in some way, grow back an industry that's just dying and almost gone here in New Zealand, our manufacturing industry. We're also looking at different ways of connecting to our markets through AR, online AR lookbooks, and into cart capabilities. So when you go to a fashion show and your market's all sitting there, front row, second row, third row, everywhere, and they see something come down the runway and they're like, oh, I love that, I want to buy that. But it's near on impossible to buy that right then and there, and it's near on impossible to try and find it afterwards until it comes out and so forth. So what we want to do is be able to pull up an AR app, hold it up to the garment, and just drag it into your cart. So you can just buy it straight away, or you can pre-order it straight away.
That's so cool, because it does take those kind of innovations, because a lot of people, as you say, with the industry being so difficult to manufacture here, like a lot of people go overseas, not because they want to necessarily, but because if you want to get, if you want to get underwire done, you can't do it in New Zealand anymore.
Totally.
And if you want to get leather with lattice work, there's no way you can do that in the country anymore. So some people are having to go overseas just because of the lack of options.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's been a problem for New Zealand for ages. And I honestly believe, hand on heart, that if people had the option, they'd remain New Zealand made. It's really, really expensive at the moment. And so we need to look at, the sustainability of our own New Zealand manufacturing, our own New Zealand, the people, the actual designers, the sustainability of the designers. Let's look after them. Let's try and create options that make it more viable to be New Zealand made, to be able to source ethically. Let's do this together, because it's never been that way.
It's pretty funny when we pass all of these, laws that I 1,000% agree with on minimum wage and environmental standards, which makes it very hard to produce in New Zealand and keep your costs down. And then we import stuff that we know is made with slave labour and horrible environmental standards, and people happily buy it.
Yeah, well, what's great is that there's a lot more conscious consumerism these days, and certainly our brand and any of the brands that we're trying to mentor, it's really, really important to us that they have a conscience about what they are doing and how they are impacting not just this generation, but all the generations to come. And that's about people and planet. It seems kind of idealistic, but at the end of the day, and unless we start changing the way that we're functioning right now, we're not going to have a place to be.
Yeah, and to run a business with that kind of kaupapa is hard. to run just your own is hard in a place of this kind of size. But then to also make the time to mentor people and to be helping to create change in the industry must be a real challenge.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I watched the movie Merita. I remember sitting there and watching her pioneering spirit and her absolute courage in the face of adversity and challenge. And many of us talked after that screening, and we felt like there were messages the whole way through it. And I felt I got this one message where she said, "If not me, then who?" And I'm not saying that I'm anything like Merita. She's a goddess. But I do often say to myself, and I do often channel her and just think, if not me, then who? Who will do it? So yeah, it's a responsibility that my poor husband has to deal with.
And how do things like the recent Leadership Award and how do the awards and recognitions, do they help? Do they help you get better sponsorship or support, or do they just let you know you're on the right track every now and again? Yeah.
I feel really, really uncomfortable in those spaces, and as cliche as that sounds, I really, really do. It makes me kind of squirm a wee bit. However, I fully respect and I'm appreciative of the acknowledgements, and also I do understand that it allows me to have the ability to speak in certain circles that I may not have been able to prior to those kinds of acknowledgements. And people are more open to hearing the messages that, and trying to get through. In a lot of people's worlds, it's currency.
And just being there, you're making the space for the next people.
I hope so.
Yeah. That seems to be, you can't be it if you can't see it, and that's so vital with that. And along the way, did people tell you that you had children? It's a hard industry. Did people tell you were crazy to try?
Oh yeah, we thought we were crazy to try. Actually, no, we were very naive in the beginning. We thought, this would be marvelous. You can stay home and look after the children and raise the children and just run this, label on the side. Oh, we were nuts. And like any entrepreneur, I think, if you really knew what was ahead, would you have started? There's been lots of people that have not only told us that we're crazy, but that there's no viable space for us. The clothing was boring and it needed to be in a museum in the bottom of the England in a place that no one would ever see it because it was so boring it would probably hurt their eyes. That was from a judge one time. That was an interesting experience. There's been people who just even now, continuously, when you mention the word Māori fashion, you have this image of something from the $2 shop with a kuru on it. And so that constant conversation of trying to explain and re-explain that, no, this is actually a very bespoke and beautiful handcrafted piece, or, this is the whakapapa or genealogy of this particular piece. And this is something this is a product offering that has never been offered before. So it's really special. Having that conversation over and over again can become quite exhausting. However, the flip side to it is that we get up every day and we're able to do something that we feel has real purpose, and we're able to, or this is one of our gauges. If we can look the kids in the eye and feel like we're good people and we're, conducting ourselves in life and in business with integrity, then we feel right. If we kind of feel like, I don't know about that decision, or, I'm not too sure about this or that, then we know that that's not right for us. So the kids, being able to look the kids in the eye is our gauge.
Oh, that's so magic. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story today, Kiri Nathan of the label Kiri Nathan.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much to Tina Tiller for producing, and thank you very much for having us along and listening. If you are a fan and follower of the Spinoff, make sure you check out the Spinoff Members, a program where you're able to get behind and support and choose and shape the investigative journalism that the Spinoff provides.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound, and brought to you by the Spinoff and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spinoff Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spinoff Podcast Network.